Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you joining us tonight for our public input session on our school board workshop for public input meeting and the draft on the ESSER fund spending. I am going to begin this meeting by turning this over to Ms. Julie Canarans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, as Ms. Chair Hughes said, to our board workshop and public input session where we are going to be outlining our proposed updated school reopening plan for the 21-22 school year, as well as the proposed and the survey results of the ESSER spending plan that we did just a little while ago. And so I'm going to start out by talking about the school reopening plan. And please know, and Ms. Meunier will also remind everybody of this, but this information will be posted to our district website at the end of the evening, as well as a form that additional public comments can be made up until the time of our next meeting. So that will all be available for everyone after tonight's meeting. So the updated school reopening plan for 21-22, the proposed plan is to be as normal as we possibly can. We are moving towards getting back to normalcy. However, we did have to update our plan that we sent to the State Department back in July of 2020. As you all know, we have been working from that plan very diligently throughout this past school year, and so we were able to take that plan, get some input from several people. We're still getting input, and update it for the coming year. So in doing that, because it is federal dollars that we have received, Ms. Smith, we have to address in our plan the following items here. There are 11 items that must be addressed in our reopening plan. And if you look at these items, none of them are new. They are all items that we have addressed from the very beginning because the requirements from receiving ESSER funds have been the same throughout. They've just added a few tweaks here and there. And so we're going to briefly go through some of these items during this presentation. The first item on the list is face coverings. The plan required us, the federal government does require us to address the appropriate wearing of face coverings. However, in accordance with our state budget proviso that just passed in the end of June of this year, Dorchester 2 will no longer require that face coverings be worn by students, staff, or visitors on district property or school buses. Those mandates from the state level have been lifted, and so in compliance with those, we will also adhere to the lifting of those requirements. However, we do want to continue to remind individuals that the CDC and other medical professionals are still recommending universal use of face coverings for all individuals over the age of 2 who are not fully vaccinated and who can't maintain social distancing. Again, that is a strong recommendation. However, once again, we are not requiring the wearing of face coverings. However, if anyone opts and wants to wear a face covering, that is certainly their personal choice. The next topic that we had to address was facility modifications. Over the course of the summer, we have worked to remove plexiglass barriers from the classrooms in order to open up the seating in there. However, we have kept a limited number of barriers in the classroom if a family chooses that they want their child to utilize it, or if we want to do smaller groups where social distancing cannot be maintained, or if the teacher wants to maintain that barrier at their desks. But however, in all classrooms, the 23 to 25 to 30 pieces of plexiglass have been removed. We will continue to seat students 3 feet apart to the extent possible. We will continue to relocate larger size classes. Hopefully we won't have many because we are working towards allocating more teachers so that we can reduce class sizes as much as possible. But we do have the capability of relocating larger class sizes to multipurpose rooms and medias. We'll continue to not use lockers in order to diminish having those high-touch surface areas. We will continue using bottle filling stations at the water fountains. We will resume the use of cafeterias, which is an exciting thing that we'll all be able to go back to the cafeterias for our lunches. And we will continue to group students in cohorts whenever possible. It's important that we try to continue doing that because we will still have to maintain our procedure for contact tracing, and if we can keep classes in cohorted groups as much as possible, that will help us in our efforts to maintain contact tracing. The next item that we have to address in our plan is hand washing and respiratory etiquette. So we will continue, as we have all year, to supply gloves, hand sanitizers, and other supplies in classrooms and throughout the schools. We have the hand sanitizer stations remaining in place in all the schools and all the buildings, so you'll see them just like you've seen them in the past. They'll still remain, and we will still continue with all of our students to teach and train on proper hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. The next topic we have to address is cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. We will continue our efforts and our emphasis on disinfecting high-touch surfaces. That still remains a priority. Our custodial staff, as well as classroom teachers and other individuals, have really got into a groove on making sure that surfaces are cleaned and sanitized as best we can, so we will continue doing that. As I said, we'll continue bottle filling stations. We will have air purifiers will be used in all classrooms. We began installing those throughout the course of this year, and we are going to pick up in schools that are in classrooms that have not yet had an air purifier installed. We will be installing those to help with the air conditioning of the air in those rooms. The HVAC systems will continue to be flushed for air filtration according to ASHRAE guidelines. That's something we've been doing all throughout this school year. Utilize bipolar ionization units for improved ventilation. Again, it's just upgrading our HVAC systems for improved ventilating, and update and perhaps repair or replace some HVAC systems in some of our older schools that need replacing. And so we'll have more on that in a little while. The next one that we need to address and we need to keep up with is contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine. We are still required to follow all the guidance from DHEC regarding those that are infected with, those that are suspected of having the COVID virus. We will continue all of the protocols and procedures that we have in place right now, and that's why maintaining seating charts and classroom rosters, as well as seating charts on school buses and in cafeterias, will be important to help our nursing staff and our district nurse coordinator to be able to do appropriate contact training. We'll maintain and staff the separate isolation rooms in all of our schools as we have done this year. We will identify close contacts, and they will be quarantined for the guidance. That's not changed either. And at this point in time, we're still going to maintain our visitor policy, where non-essential visitors will continue to be limited and scheduled by appointment. We want folks to come into the schools, but we want them to come in a controlled environment so that we can make sure that we have the appropriate rooms and all of the appropriate materials ready for their visit. That's what has worked well this year. Our principals have been okay with those policies and procedures, and so we will continue with that at least throughout the beginning of the year. Diagnostic screening and testing. We began last year a partnership with Better Health Clinic and other medical providers in order to assist us with having a group that we could refer our students, families, and staff to for diagnostic testing and screening. And so we're going to continue those partnerships this year. We will also, continue to promote and get information out to all of our families about where those diagnostic testing centers are and how they can be accessed throughout the community. The same goes for vaccination accessibility. We will keep up our partnership with FEDER as well as all of the other medical entities who offer vaccinations. We'll monitor, and so that if individuals are interested, 12 years old and older are now eligible for the vaccine in South Carolina. And so we will maintain those partnerships so that we can provide information to families who are interested in getting the vaccinations. Accommodations for children with disabilities. Our Pupil Personnel Services Department will continue to follow current IEP and 504 accommodation plans. Upon request, we will give clear masks provided to teachers and other staff members in our special needs classroom if they feel that they still need that separation because of close contact or close proximity. Teachers and staff, just like with any of our other students, will encourage the use of proper hand hygienes and respiratory etiquette, and the instructions for those tasks will be delivered in a way that all students can understand. The next topic we had to address is coordination with state and local health officials. And so I'm sure you've seen all of this information before. We'll continue collaborating with the State Department of Education, with DHEC, with Feder Health, and with MUSC. We have continued and we will continue into the upcoming school year to review and look at our school and district data. We have even continued that throughout the summer with our summer programs, so that as we have been removing plexiglass and making the other modifications that we've made over the summer, we can continue to track our active cases as well as those individuals who have to be quarantined. We will also look at the cohort data. We continue to monitor our two-week DHEC countywide data, as well as our zip code data, just so that we can see the trends of what's going on throughout Dorchester County and the zip codes that feed into our schools. Then the next section, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Lori Estep, who is going to talk to us about the continuity of services plan that is also required as a part of our return to in-person learning.
Okay, as Ms. Canaran said, the last 2 points that we have to include in our plan are the continuity of services as well as the communication plan for everyone involved. So under the continuity of services, that includes our instructional models, that includes our student instructional support, our social, emotional, and mental health supports, parent and family engagement, summer learning opportunities, and our Road to Recovery plan, which encompasses several plans that we have to turn into the State Department. The first one is instructional models. I'm happy to report that we have 2 for next year, only 2, no switching back and forth, hopefully. The first one is our school-based instruction, which is full-face-to-face, full-time face-to-face. And then we also have an option for a virtual academy, and that is for grades 4 through 12, and that's being offered through the Low Country Education Consortium and called Low Country Virtual. So those are our 2 options on the table for next year. We are going to continue with many of our student instructional supports that we've had in the past, and in the new ones that we implemented these past year and a half with COVID. I won't read through all of these, but there are a lot that we have to offer, all at the elementary, middle, and high school level. So you can see we have interventions for those students needing a little extra help, whether that be reading or math. We also have increased time for direct instruction, hands-on learning. We will have after-school tutoring or Saturday school tutoring. The principals can decide whether that'll be after school or early in the morning or when that might be, and that will be communicated to parents and to students so that you know when those opportunities are. We have fluid and flexible student schedules to accommodate the different instructional needs of our learners. And again, as I said, I won't read through all of those, but we are going to continue to provide all of the supports that our students need, whatever those may be. Okay, part of our continuity of services also includes our social, emotional, and mental health supports. As you can see, we want to continue to provide mental health counselors at all schools. We have those in the schools now, but want to continue that support and possibly increase the support. We also will use utilizing assessment data in order to develop lessons and interventions to support students. And this encompasses many of the things that you see: academic planning, career planning, self-regulation and emotional management, suicide awareness information, healthy relationships, diversity and inclusion, conflict resolution, responsible decision-making, and goal setting. Those are some things that all of our students need in order to become productive citizens as they go through school and graduate and move into either college or their careers. Another part of the continuity of services is parent and family engagement. We're happy to report that we are going to have another family and parent engagement center this year, which will bring our total to 5, all strategically placed throughout the district for ease of access for families. Those parent and family engagement centers host a variety of events for parents and children to participate in. Our schools also, particularly at the elementary level, provide workshops and activities to help parents with their child's learning, such as family math nights, science nights, STEAM nights, many of those that you are already aware of. But technology nights we added this past year, anything that parents indicate that they may find helpful in terms of a workshop or a meeting to help with their child's learning. And we will also utilize social media to promote at-home activities so that parents and families can help their students at home also, so that they see we truly are working together, school and home. Our summer learning opportunities, we plan to continue those. We are in the middle of our summer learning opportunities now, and those are going very well. We had quite a few families and students take advantage of those. We offer those learning opportunities for remediation, for enrichment, for continued support, and also we plan to continue those through 2024 with the help of the ESSER funds, so that we, again, can make sure that our students do not have a learning loss or a learning regression. The last part that we have to address of the 11 topics or areas that Ms. Canaran spoke to you about in the beginning is the communication of the plan. We certainly want all of our parents and families and community and students to know what is happening and where to go for support or what we're doing within the schools. So we will be sure to post that information as we've done in the past on district and school websites, send emails, text communication, post on social media. Teachers and schools will make phone calls. We'll continue with the live stream, board meeting updates, press releases, any way you can imagine to communicate. We are going to get this plan and the communication out there. So that wraps up the continuity of services section, and now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tina Meunier so that she can talk about the American Rescue Plan, or ARP Act.
Good evening. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARP Act, is actually what was passed as the latest legislation for these ESSER III funds. So if you hear those two interchangeably, they're the same pot of monies for this ESSER III. So the American Rescue Plan Act is what you'll see on our next slide, is the ESSER III spending plan. Just to point out, the funding plan has not yet been approved or received. We have not received any of the money. That's why we're taking public input, and we're getting information from the community and from parents and administrators and leadership, so we can all come up with a good plan on how to spend this money. So the allocation that Dorchester District 2 received is $40.5 million for our allocation. In this act, at least 20% of our funds have to address learning loss. So $8.1 million has to go towards learning loss. The remaining funds, over that 20%, can be used in 15 categories, which we'll go over on the next slide. One of the other requirements is that we had to get public input. We're glad to see so many folks here tonight. Thank you. And we must complete and submit our spending plan application by August 24th to the State Department of Education, and it will be posted on our website at that time, the final plan. So these are our 15 categories for our ESSER III funding. These are also the same 15 categories that we had for ESSER II, which we are utilizing our ESSER II funds right now. And so we have already allocated a good portion for categories 5 and 6 and 7. That was for when we were purchasing when we were training our folks to get ready for students to come back, and for purchasing cleaning supplies, which we will continue to do. So we have spent a lot of money in that, but ESSER III allows us to continue to do that. As Ms. Esep said, we have this funding until September of 2024. Some of the new categories, I just wanted to point out that were kind of big, that they were stressing to us, are the last three. So learning loss, again, is really, really important for us to try to catch up the children in number 13. 14 is school facility repairs and improvements for indoor air quality that Ms. Kinnear spoke about earlier, that we are working on those two categories as well, to make sure everyone is safe. So for our community survey, our window that was open was June 16th through July 9th. We had 2,785 responses. That was great. Thank you all very much for responding to our online survey. So just go over those results with you. On question 1, you're supposed to just tell us which category you were in. Are you a community member, a parent, staff, student, are you administrator, or other? Some of the others were, they were grandparents. They didn't think they would fell under the parents, so they put grandparents. Or if they were a graduating senior, they told us those were some of the other responders. So we were glad to see so many parents respond to this. There were 2,159 in that category. So question 2, we were asking to please tell us what you felt was the most important category for us to fund with these monies, the most important. So the number 1 response was to support school leaders and school needs. And that didn't specifically say that, but from the other responses that we received that we'll talk about in just a minute, I feel like that was number 1 for teacher support, for school leaders being the teachers in the schools. Number 2 was learning loss, which that was great because we have to definitely want to catch up those students, so we will be addressing learning loss with these monies. And then mental health supports came in at number 3. That's very important for all of this past year and a half that we've all had to go through. Question 3, we were asking what is the second most important category for us to fund. So still in number 1 position was supporting our school leaders and school needs. Tied for second place for the mental health supports and education technology. And then number 3 came in as learning loss. That's still very important. On question 4, we were asking for the third most important. What moved to number 1 in this third most important category was to purchase education technology. For this, it seemed like it was more to buy some additional programs maybe, and to have some more support for teachers to be able to teach from their technology. So on question 5, we were asking, what are the best ways for schools in the district to address the learning loss with the minimum of the 20% of our ESSER III funds? How should we address learning loss from the category? So number 1 was tutoring, and number 2 was comprehensive after-school programs. Number 3 was summer enrichment. So it's exciting to know that we have really already implemented that. This summer we have really offered so many summer programs, and we plan on continuing that. So I feel like we're really in line with that for our addressing learning loss. So number 6 was kind of our tell us what you think question. Just type it out. What do you think? So ESSER I and ESSER II funds were used for, and are being used for, as we talked earlier, for things like teachers. We are hiring some additional teachers with our ESSER II funds to reduce class sizes. We've used food service for after-school programs, Saturday school, our tutoring, our PPE, technology equipment and software, our summer reading, and our summer school. We're also spending ESSER II funds on math coaches for this coming up here, for instructional materials, and for additional mental health counselors. So what else should we focus on with our ESSER III fund? Got a note here. Bonuses are not an allowable expense. The number 1, repeatedly, over and over and over, what we heard was to hire more teachers to reduce class sizes. So we've really tried to do that, to implement that for this coming up year, and these funds will help us to carry that into the next year and hopefully the next year as well. The after-school programs and tutoring were a very big response. Help for special needs students by having additional programs and smaller classes, for social emotional learning, to continue with our sanitation and cleanliness, have additional mental health counseling. Fine arts was a comment for fine arts to be increased, teacher training, and then I wanted to notate this, that pay raises for all staff, that was a response as well. And unfortunately, just like we noted above, that bonuses are not an allowable expense. Base pay increases for staff, teachers, are not allowable, unfortunately. We're not able to use the ESSER III to increase our base pay. However, we are allowed, and we have been paying now for additional dollars for additional work. I know everybody's doing additional work is the hard part. So for our survey of our summary, we just felt good that our target areas that we've been working on already and that we've been discussing, they were right in line in most all areas. We heard y'all. We know that we want to reduce class sizes and by hiring additional teachers. We wanted to also increase our educational technology and the infrastructure to support that technology. So as we get new devices and we have more educational programs, we have to make sure that our infrastructure can support that. Mental health support, we were able to increase our mental health counseling contract for this current year. Unfortunately, we had a difficult time. They weren't able to find the mental health counselors. Hopefully this new year coming up will be a little different. When we're getting out of this COVID, maybe more folks will be able to come and help us in that area. We also need and want to measure assessments of student learning. So we're looking at some programs that we are able to gather that data and that feedback. Again, learning loss for tutoring and after-school programs, indoor air quality, and facility upgrades. So our next steps, since we gathered that information in the survey and presented that this evening, and we want to take your public input and hear some questions from y'all. Excuse me. After tonight, as Ms. Canaran said, we'll post this presentation on the website, and we will have a public comment card, a section on the website where you're able to provide more comments to us and let us know what your thoughts are on the spending plan portion, on the money and the different pots of money, and also on the reopening plan. We're taking comments on that as well. So we'll gather the information from that time frame because we're going to open up that comment section until midnight on July 30th. And then we'll take that information that we've gathered and internally work on a spending plan, putting the dollars to the different categories. Then we'll take that information and present that on August 9th. And then after August 9th, after we have our additional public input meeting from y'all again to hear about that information, if there are any changes, we will be able to present that on August 23rd at our board meeting, and then we are required to submit on August 24th to the State Department of Education and a post on our website. So those were all of the slides that we had for our reopening plan and for the results from our survey. So now, should we open it up for questions, comments? Oh, and Miss Hughes has the microphone.
Oh. Okay, I think what we're going to do now, I think we're going to go ahead and just open it up. And if you can see, we have 2 microphones on both of the aisles here. So anyone who is interested, if you could, when you come up, just state your name, and so that we're able to get in touch with you if we need to get in touch with you, that kind of thing. So if you want to just come up and then you can state your question, and then we are able to answer, and we can have the ones who just get up and spoke, they can get up and they can hopefully answer some of your questions. Maybe we can get most of those done here tonight. If not, then we'll get your information and then we can get in touch with you after that. So if you'd like to just go ahead and come on up to the microphones, the ones who are interested in speaking or have any questions. There we go. The ice is being broken. Come on up. Come on down. You can just get right here to the mic. You want to turn that way? That's fine. Turn it around. That's fine, yeah. Since there's nobody else.
Yeah, that would make sense. Think smarter, not harder.
That's right.
What's up, peeps? Kathleen Duffy here, local resident. And I've resided here, is this on? Okay. I've resided here for 16 years. I do have 2 graduates, 21 and 20, who've graduated right from this school. I have one left, I'm raising her here, Molly Jean. She came up from Beach Hill. And I just gave her, from her principal, a big hug. And she's going into 8th grade. She's going into DeBose, actually. So my question is, I'm just going to basically pinpoint it and nail it and say, how many teachers have you hired thus far?
Ms. Fenari?
Let's hear it.
I-
How many teachers have been
hold that
hired
thought. I'll
thus
bring the
far
mic to
for
you.
8th grade?
I'll be the mic runner.
8th grade.
Ms. Duffy, you said?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Elena Fenari. I'm Executive Director of Personnel. That's a very specific question.
Yes.
How many have we hired for 8th grade? I can't answer that tonight off the top of my head, but I'm happy to share that information if you'd like later.
All right.
I mean, I just can't, I
How about
can't.
general terms. How many teachers have we hired thus far? General
We've hired
terms.
over 200 teachers.
Fabulous. Keep
Okay.
it up. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, just a reminder before we go on, I'm sorry if I could interrupt just 1 second. Just a reminder, we have set, just like at our board meetings, a 3-minute time limit on your speaking. Does not mean that it is a 3-minute time limit on answers, just the speaking, and that's just so that we can make sure that we have enough time to allow everyone to get up and speak if they have a question. So, okay, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Melinda Orcutt. I actually graduated from this school a while ago, but I left for 20-something years. We were living in California. My family just moved back 4 years ago, and my son was a freshman. And we are very passionate about the Fox Ridge Farm and the ag program at Ashley Ridge High School. It has been such a benefit to our family. For him coming in and not knowing anybody in the school, in the area. This program gave him an opportunity to work with different people from different backgrounds to accomplish a common goal. This community accepted him from day one and through the 4 years with this program. They became a family to him. He has always enjoyed being around animals and for caring for them. This program gave him that opportunity as well. Ag gave him a time to get out of the classroom and de-stress. Being around baby animals or being able to play in a football field and get paint all over you, sure, that would help me to be de-stressed. It also brought us together as a family, where we were able to work together at different farm events, work on the farm feeding the animals on the weekends and the holidays. We have spent many hours helping at the farm in any way that we could, and sometimes financially. We have enjoyed every minute of it, all the time, and we've met a great group of people. They have accepted us wholeheartedly. Even though he has graduated, we have not finished with that farm or the ag program. We will be a very active part in that, and that's why I'm here this evening, because unfortunately this past year, due to COVID and the COVID protocols, they have suffered financially. We really hope that you will consider them for some of this COVID relief to help replenish the lost income due to the inability to be able to host field trips or to sell their peanuts, which brought in those funds. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate that you consider their program.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you're doing for the Fox Farms. We appreciate that as well. Okay. Do we have, oh, here we go.
Hey, I am a 2020 graduate of Ashley Ridge High School, as well a graduate from Beach Hill Elementary and Gregg Middle School here at DD2. I have had a major time. I'm sorry, I had a speech written, but it got ruined by the rain. I'm just going to talk. Along with her, Fox Ridge Farm has changed my life. I was the former president of Fox Ridge Farm's FFA program. It's affected my life. It's affected many other kids' lives. It's very sentimental to me because I love that farm so much, and it hurts to see what it's been through this pandemic. It has lost so much money. It's hindered so many kids' opportunities to learn and grow. That program helps build character and hardworking students, and not only does it educate the kids, it educates part of your community. They post goat soap making classes and other events that involve the community, and they really deserve a lot of this funding. They've asked for about $20,000 to help get through what they've been through. Most of their funding through the pandemic, because they couldn't raise it themselves, they had a lot of the community help and a lot of donations that have helped them keep up the farm and keep the animals fed. Without the help of the community, they would not be where they are now, and they would like to have some of the funding to help get them back to ground zero. That was all I have to say. But I want to help rebuild the program that built me personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have anyone else that would like to get up and speak? That's a tough comment to follow, isn't it?
My name is John Gatcho, and my concern is for the learning loss. When you're testing, how are you going to go about assessing the students that have learning loss? Because I know my kids take these tests that you have, and they stress. So to add more stress to the children that have already been through a stressful situation by giving them a test, and whether there's teachers in it or not, we have people that say this is going to depend on your grade, and if you go to the next grade. My daughter wouldn't lie to me. She's 9 years old. So is there going to be testing, or is it going to be another way that you do it? To add more testing and stress to them is not going to help them students, I don't think.
I can answer that, I believe. So we do have assessments, and we have a lot of assessments. We have formative assessments, and we have summative assessments. Formative assessments are those assessments that we look at often so that it might be 10 questions after they've covered a particular standard. And so we have those at the district level for both reading and for math. Our teachers do a lot of informal assessing. We call it checking for understanding, where they may watch students in the classroom do something or perform a task so that they're not as stressed out because they're used to their teacher. They're just, again, checking for understanding to make sure that they know it. Our big assessments, which you might be talking about, sir, are those state assessments that, of course, we have to give. And so we will use that information as well. We don't base everything on only one assessment. Again, we use multiple forms of assessment, whether they be paper, pencil, on the computer, or again, it might be performance-based or task-based, something that ties back always to the standards on what they're asked to learn. Hope that helps.
Cutting back on as much as possible. The problem is, so many children learn so differently, and especially at different levels. How do you know where a first grade class, a third grade class, they're not all on the same page from day one? The teacher needs to know where they are so she's not wasting some students' time while not going so fast as to leave children behind. So that's a real difficult thing, but our teachers are more stressed for the testing than are the students, and they had their way about it. It'd be totally minus the state testing. That is an issue for us, and I have my own personal issues about the state testing, but it gives us information, but I'm not sure how reliable. There's no better information than the classroom teacher. And that's what we're trying to center around.
I just want to add one more thing. I'm not sure what grade you said your child was in. Okay, but we do have, and I want to address this because sometimes this is where some of our questions come from, is the Read to Succeed law, where third graders, if they don't score at a certain place on the state assessment, which is a not met 1 in reading, then they are required to attend summer school and reach a certain, on a different assessment, reach another level. I will tell you, in the 5 or 6 years that I've been in this position, we've been very fortunate to not have very many of those third graders have to come or be required to come to our summer reading camp, and those that have come, we have had, I can count on one hand the number that have been held back solely for that Read to Succeed legislation. Sure. Yes, sir. True, you're right. And we will do a better job if we need to be, and I would encourage you to reach out to your teacher or principal to let them know.
We should not have had state testing this spring as we did last year. It was not fair to our students, our teachers. The information's going to be so flawed, it was a waste of time. Children were very anxious, very upset at all levels, and that's a real thing that happens every year, but it was worse this year than ever because they were being asked questions that they had not been exposed to. It's not, and then young children in particular internalizes that they're dumb, they can't do, they're behind. They weren't taught it. They weren't exposed to it. Our teachers did a miraculous job of trying to cover all the material. It's impossible for the average teacher to cover everything in 9 months, let alone in 3 or 4 months or 5, whatever ended up being what we had. But they tried to do a whole year in like a third of a year. And hats off to them. They did a great job, and I look for our results to show some deficiencies when they come back. But at the same time, I'm concerned that it's not going to tell us where, what, and when, because what it's measuring is hard for us to determine based on where was that child in the process of what did they know when they got there. And it may be they weren't taught it, so it's not that they can't learn it or didn't learn it. They weren't exposed to it, and that's not fair to judge people on that. So we're going to look at that. You know, we'll have to do what the state says, but it comes down to the third graders perhaps. But we're doing everything on our side to make sure that's not a deciding factor ever in a child's retention. That helps you any.
Yeah, and I think that's why we do so many different types of assessing, so that we don't have to depend solely on that state testing, because we know we do have several students that don't test well. And to sit down to a piece of paper with a piece of paper and a pencil and go through that test, sometimes if you ask them the question and you talk to them individually, they do much better. That's the reason why we try to do assessments in several different ways, so that when it comes to retention, then we have a better handle on that than the state test will show us. So that's the purpose for that. Coming up, so
many interventions going on, and I think that's wonderful. We need those. I feel like we need to make sure that the intervention numbers, the amount of children in those classrooms, are truly intervention numbers. Because if you're going to call something an intervention and then throw 18 people in that room, that's not an intervention. So I think we just need to be careful that the intervention is truly an intervention. 6 to 10 is usually what they say.
Instruction. We can't give her 25 and 30 children after school when she said 25, 35 during the day. We just can't do that. So we have to smaller numbers. The smaller the numbers, the more effective we're going to be, but the more teachers we're going to need. And there's a major teacher shortage going on, and we're doing everything we know to do to try to lure them in. I was livid to find out we were like 20 teachers short today, even though I wasn't surprised, but normally this time of the year we're down to like 5 teachers, and this is the most it's been. But we hired a lot of extra teachers to try to reduce class sizes. So if you take that in consideration, we probably are caught up on what we had to replace. We just are trying to hire more so we can lower these class sizes. So that's the number. But when we checked with our 2 neighbors, one of them told us that it was in the 90s there. So we're 20 today and they're in the 90s. Well, we're doing something right. It's the same thing. We still have to have the teachers to do it, but I don't want the kids to be pulled out of math to be helped with math. They need to still be in their math. We have to teach grade level standards. If they're a 4th grader, they have to be exposed to 4th grade standards. That's what they're tested on. That's what we measure them on. But if they're behind and really on 3rd grade level, we try to give supports to try to catch them up. And that's what she's talking about. A lot of that a child may qualify for 3 or 4 interventions, and that's just not practical. So we have to really monitor that, make sure we're being fair to kids, and we're not expecting too much. We're going to have to choose which is the best intervention for that child, and every child won't be in every intervention. You're right. We have to watch those numbers are critical. And the amount of time each child is pulled out of that classroom. Yes. Well, that's a classroom.
I would think, I was a teacher for 30 years, okay, I'm retired. I would think that a good teacher, when those students come in, that she's going to assess them somehow. She has to. She's got to know where every child is, like somebody said. But that they're going to have to kind of like step back and punt. They're going to have to go back at that time without even being pulled out. They're going to have to step back and punt to get them caught up. If there's, say for example, they didn't teach long division in 3rd grade before they got out. That's a 4th grade skill too, I believe, or whatever, wherever it is. But the point being is, that would be the whole class that didn't get that. So I would think that a teacher would have to step back and punt and do that with the whole class, not go to an interventionist for it, because it was the year before skill. So that goes back on the teacher, and that's what we expect teachers to do. And I mean, that's what we want to do. We love it, whatever. But so I would think they're not always going to be pulled out. They can be assessed. I mean, they can be taken care of in the classroom.
Yeah, she's just. Yeah.
Nobody replaces the teacher. Classroom teacher is the accountable person. Teachers support people, but supporting that teacher. They have to plan together, work together, and that's not always happen. So we're going to really look at our intervention, we're going to look at our core program. What is the classroom teacher teaching, and what is it that we have found out, whatever assessment the child needs, and that's where we bring in support for that child based on what the teacher is saying is needed, and it dovetails what she's teaching. So children aren't being taught two different things at the same time. You're down here teaching me how to add in this room, but I'm being taught to multiply here. You can't multiply if you can't add. So the bottom line is we've got to dovetail this together. We do a good job of that, but we've learned through this process that we have so much out there. Be careful that we don't do too much. We need to keep it simple. Less is best. Let's make it with intensity. Let's make it with targeted instruction that we are able to have a goal and we can determine if we're making it or not, and we're not wasting anybody's time. We've got to maximize time, especially now that not only to keep children up, we got to catch them up. We got to do both things at the same time and teach them new material. So it's really three things we're doing. And we've always done two. Now we've had to add a third one. And that's going to make it harder for teachers, but I think our people's up to the challenge. They normally are, but again, I'm sure if there's a child that is struggling reading, we get them in the middle of the year, they walk in the door, they're 3 grade levels behind, any principal or whoever's doing the placement is going to struggle to find a place for that child. They do it, and I know what she's saying, but it's done for the right reasons. It's not to cut corners, because there's a teacher shortage, and you can't find the teachers and to do that. So that's why I'd rather lower the class sizes than have intervention teachers and keep the kids in the classroom with the one teacher and let her have them all day to work with them and to do her part. And we can have assistance for maybe some real struggling students who are way behind. We can work with them, but we're trying to do everybody all the time, and that's why we're a good school system. But things have changed, and we're having to look at this in a different way. We just can't throw out the shrimp net and bring a lot of shrimp in. Let's throw it out where we know we're gonna catch a bunch of shrimp. You just don't throw it out and guess. You go with the right haul in, right?
I'm Mary Hoffman. My daughter just graduated from Fort Dorchester High School, and I have a son that's a rising 7th grader at Oak Brook. And I'm not exactly sure what your concern was. You're a teacher? It sounds to me that you were asking for more support because there are people that come into your classroom to remove students for assessing or for intervention. Oh, an interventionist is someone that helps like tutor a student to help them get. Okay. During the class day. Okay. My question is, I love the survey that you sent out to us, parents. Do you ask the teachers and survey them as well? Okay. Okay. All right. I'm kind of new to this. I'm sorry. I apologize for being a bad parent and not getting involved sooner, but I am determined to ensure that my son graduates with a good education. That's my biggest concern. And to get rid of all the little fluff that's not necessary, but to make sure he learns reading, writing, arithmetic, history, blah, blah, blah. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it for clarifying.
Thank you. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's what Ms. Watson was referring to, is when they're being pulled out, the fact that when she has a group that comes out to her, she would prefer a smaller size group so that she can give them that individualized attention that they're needing, so that she can catch them back up, so they can be back in their classroom and learning right along with all the other students. So that's what she was referring to, instead of getting another big group that they have to just go sit in with another big group and they're not able to. You're welcome. Okay.
I like a lot of the suggestions that they put in here about how to better our facilities or the education. What I have a big problem with is the Trojan horse that is in the guidance curriculum, which hides critical race theory ideologies and is already banned in the social emotional education or this mental health. Yet the DD2 school board continues to push forward inside these ESSER fund proposals. I'd like to specifically address the guidance counselor's SEL roadmap for reopening schools and its clear support of the Black Lives Matter organization and its agenda. I quote from this: "We face the layered impact of school closures, COVID-19 economic crisis, and persistent racial inequities exacerbated by the pandemic, amplified by the nationwide mobilization for racial justice reflected in the Black Lives Matter movement." End quote. This roadmap for reopening our schools continues its focus on these ideologies in its instructions for teachers and counselors to make our children, and I quote again from the curriculum, "identify opportunities for innovation and anti-racist practices, and to discuss the impact of the pandemic and racial inequity, and to elevate student voices in reflecting and acting on data." End quote. The CRT ideology of equity over equality is divisive and banned from being taught in our schools. I object to it being put in the ESSER funds plan under social emotional education, mental health, or any other guise. The key to inclusion is through equality. We are one race, the human race. This curriculum divides children from each other and divides children from their parents. Additionally, guidance counselors and teachers are encouraged to shove this belief system down our children's throat all day long. I quote from the curriculum, "Integrating and aligning SEL with other priorities, including academics, is important because it optimally supports social and emotional development throughout the school day. The rates for students failing in South Carolina and across this country are through the roof. And your reopening plan wants school staff to focus throughout the day on indoctrinating social ideologies rather than educating the children. You need to leave the social and emotional discussions for inside the home to be taught according to each family's personal values. Focus the school staff on teaching, reading, writing, math, and science. You need to fix your failure by getting every single student back on track in academics. I do not consent to my children participating in it, and I do not consent to pay for it with my tax dollars or these ESSER funds. My question to you, are you going to provide a form to allow children to opt out of guidance and mental health, and are you going to weed out the CRT ideologies out of the systems already in place? I know you've been ignoring my emails. You have no answer?
I
Are you
don't- I
going
don't-
to
I
allow
don't-
parents to opt their own children out of mental health services when you are not a mental health facility? Are you
I
going
think-
to allow children the form? I absolutely sent you the link. In every single thing I sent you, the link to the exact place where I quoted it was on there. It is in the guidance curriculum. The guidance coordinator sent me. You do know about it. I have informed you.
Just a minute, Barbara. Okay. I can tell you that it's, as far as a board is concerned, when we look at the curriculum, we definitely look at that kind of thing, and we are looking at that. We're addressing the policies that are revolving around that. And I do believe that we also have mental health. Parents can opt out of that. It is something that is not solely decided among our teachers and our staff. That if a parent does wish for their child not to be enrolled in a mental health within our school system, then they certainly can do that. That is certainly a choice of yours.
What about when they're inside of our classrooms, sorting our children into small groups and having discussions within the classrooms instead of teaching them?
We do not do that as far as a mental health is concerned. That is done on an individual basis. Mental health is addressed in their mental health office with the specific child. It is not done in a group setting.
The SEL model and the South Carolina model both say that the teachers are evaluating them for particular problems at home, and they are separating them into different groups within the class and visiting them individually to discuss these matters. In the ASDA, I believe is the acronym for it, and the SEL, it says they're specifically talking about equity and race.
Well, we definitely need to look into that, Mr. Pye. That is something we need to look into, and we need to be informed about that as far as the board is concerned as well, as you normally do inform us about all that stuff. But as far as we know as a board, that is not something that is happening in our class. We teach the state standards, and it is not in a state standard that those type of things are taught unless it's a newly developed state standard that we're not aware of. So, and so that is being looked at. Mr. Pye just stated that's being looked at, and he will get that information to us as soon as he finds out that part of it, and then we'll talk about it at that time.
And my next question is, if it is being taught in the classes and it is being in the schools, are you going to provide a specific way for us to report and penalize the staff members teaching it?
You absolutely have the opportunity or have the advantage to call any one of us board members and talk to any one of us board members at any time, email us at any time, anything that's going on within our school system that you are not, that is not up to the standards. Exactly. It's not what the standards are. First thing you do, there is a protocol. The first thing that you do is you report it to your principal. You talk to your teacher, then you go to your principal. If you do not get what you feel that you should be getting from them, then you contact one of us, and then in return, we will address it with Mr. Pye, and Mr. Pye will address it with the specific school or the specific principal, and then it's taken care of that way. We as board members don't go to the individual. We go to Mr. Pye, and then Mr. Pye will address it with them. So yes, you do have that opportunity to do that at any time, not only this that you're referring to, but anything that you have going on in the school system.
I certainly hope it works better than last year, because last year I went to the principals and I went to the guidance counselor, and instead of halting at my request, they asked my daughter if there was anything that I didn't want them talking to guidance about. That is none of your business, none of the school's business. That is my business. That is my child. They are there to be taught academics. And going to the school board gets vague emails, as we know every single one of you sent me out, and everybody else out in our parent group, about how you follow the standards. This is in your standards. This is in your curriculum. It's in all three of your resources through guidance counselor, and you have failed to provide anybody the opportunity to have an official form to opt out, and you are aware that it's in there. So
I'm
I
not
hope
aware that it's in
you
there.
stick by what you
So
say, but
I'm
it's
standing
not-
in front of you face to face and telling you, I am not aware that it's in there.
Well, I will send you every link to every single
I
portion.
want
of
you
the
to, because
hundreds of pages.
I want to see that. If that is the case, I want to see that.
What happened? I don't want to know what you read. I want to know what happened to your child in her classroom that bothered you. Let me know. I will check with teachers, discussing she's a Republican, she's a Democrat, she believes in this, she believes in that. That's wrong. We're not going to put that. We will deal with it. But I can't deal with what happened last year because I'm a issue. Thanks for all the people even there. It's come out and we have no way of investigating. This is the troublesome thing that we have to deal with. We deal with it with what we think they can teach and can't teach. And at the same time, if there are violations of that, first steps, other disciplinary action, or we have to say, look at, if this is the way it's going to be, then we present and look at some of that. That's what, that is just one of those things. It's just such a hard thing to deal with. Back in class, you go in, talk to the group, you go, what do we do with 6 kids who opted out? We got 18 students fine. Where are those 6 kids go?
They can go to the library. If you take the books about princesses being homosexual and drag queens out of the library, that would be great. You can send them to the library, or you can just not bring social education and social curriculum inside the classrooms. That's a whole other department that we're working on. I know for a fact Princess and Princess was taught to my 3rd grader last year
What school should go to?
at Fort Dorchester Elementary School.
We will check Fort Dorchester tomorrow morning in the library. I want to know if those books are there, and I will tell you now, move them off the shelf. We have
That's what I
thousands and
wanna know.
thousands
You're
of
willing
books.
to
If there's a book
terminate
that bothers
teachers.
anybody, we don't need to have it because we got thousands and
I
thousands to
appreciate
choose
that.
from. We don't need to just have a controversial book, and I don't know, I've never heard of those 2 books, but we will check it tomorrow.
Yes, if you're willing to terminate teachers for violating these standards, I am happy to hear that, and we will definitely utilize that resource.
We have to follow. Contracted teachers in South Carolina have a lot of protection, rightfully so. People have abused it in the past. It's an act of Congress, but our district has gone on record. We don't, when we have a rule or regulation, and that's there, and you've been trained, you've been told, and you continue to do it, you've even been warned, then you've asking for trouble, and we deal with that on any effort. No matter, it doesn't have to be about a book or whatever, or what they said, that's on anything. That's just, that's why we have rules and regulations. These are other people's children. We have the responsibility to teach them. We also have a responsibility to do it the right way and do the right thing. So that we will do everything we can to honor. We're not going to tolerate people abusing that. It's not a free-for-all. And I'm not aware of any of that happening. Every principals meeting, the board brought it to my attention months ago. I had a principals meeting. Principals, some of you are in here. We chastised them. I asked them about a particular book at the time. It was another book. I can't remember what it was. Is that in our libraries? I want to know where this book is. I want to see the book. Bring me the book. And if you haven't already removed it. But if you think it's needed to be in the library, I want you to bring it to me. And I have a parent committee that's anonymous. I don't know who they are. We just have somebody pick them every year. We have ministers on it. We have all kind of people. And they review the book if it's a problem, and it's taken off the shelf. We've taken some off since I've been superintendent. Some stayed on. But I will tell you now, as a superintendent, I'm not going to have lewd books on the shelf. Because it's of a topic, you can't censor every topic known to man. You just can't do it. There's too much out there. But if there's a known book that that's what the focus is, then it is so controversial, we don't need that. Like I said, we have thousands of books that teach this other things, that teach the standards that are enjoyable for kids to read, classics and all. We could fill up every library in this district with different books instead of plenty to go. So there's so many to choose from. Why do we get bogged down over 25 or 30 books? And I know some of the Caldecott winners, some of the gold medal winners that come from us junior books and what have you. The teachers get that list, the librarians, well, that's been sanctioned, the Good Housekeeping seal. So we ordered 10 copies of each one. Has someone looked at those books? Order 1 copy. If you think it's appropriate and fine, then you order the 10 copies. Just because they're a winner, we don't know what kind of panel picked them under what things is it appropriate. If it's in a school with K through 5, is it appropriate for every one of those age groups, no matter what subject it is? If it's about if somebody was murdered, is that appropriate for that young of a child to even hear that? So it's just not just the topics you mentioned, it's a lot of topics that's inappropriate for kids to be exposed to at an early age like that and not have anybody explain to them what context it's there. And again, we have too much on our plate to spend time explaining all these things in a book that have nothing to do with reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
The only thing I briefly wanted to say was, I'm on the policy committee, and the policy committee is meeting tomorrow, and we want to check into things like that. We're going word by word on some of these policies that would clarify what can be taught and what can't be taught, which she's already said was basically South Carolina state standards. But the legislators have already signed a proviso saying that CRT will not be taught in the state of South Carolina this year because they didn't have time to take up the whole session before they went out. But for this whole year, it's already been denied that it will not be taught in South Carolina. So we have that supporting us too.
And I know you said you were going to investigate this, but once again, I got this week, last week from the guidance coordinator, the list of 3 specific DD2 resources that we're using for guidance curriculum. And identifying opportunities for innovation and anti-racist practices, that's CRT. Discussing the impact of the pandemic and racial inequities, that is CRT. You know, it's by Black Lives racial justice reflected in the Black Lives Matter movement, word for word from the curriculum that I was given by the DD2 guidance counselor last week for the proposed 2021-2022 school plan. So it's already in there. It was for the whole guidance program curriculum, what she gave me. All 3 resources had clear and concise CRT ideologies inside of them. So if she read any of them and thought they weren't from CRT, then you've got to be blind, because it's clear in all 3 of them that it's riddled with it, and it's scheduled to be there for this school year. And I appreciate teachers who do not teach that in their classes, regardless of whether they're allowed to or not. Because there is a lot of teachers that say, I'm not going to do it even if I'm allowed to. But we can't allow any of the ones to do it. We have to remove it.
Ms. Canarins, can we have that along with in our policy meeting tomorrow? Can you have that so that we can make sure that we have that to look at as well? No. I'm talking about the guidance counselor, the list that she's given. That's the part that we want to see. Yes. Then we've got to look at that as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to look at all of it. Yeah. So, okay. Any other questions? Did you have another question or comment? Come on up.
My name is Anna. Just like they're not allowed to talk about Black Lives Matter and like politics type stuff, are y'all going to have like policies set so that teachers are not allowed to talk about vaccinations to these kids? Because they don't deserve to be, you know. Yeah, I just don't want like kids to be pressured by their teachers that you need to get vaccinated. I don't want to.
And that is not something that we allow. They are not to be pressured by a teacher to do it. That is something. That's right. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. I don't see anybody else right now.
I was just going to ask a question about the infrastructure to support technology. I think that was mentioned. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about what that would involve.
As you continue to add more devices, you need to continually beef up your infrastructure. So that's what we'll be looking at, working with Canty Technologies, working with the State Department, requesting if we need more bandwidth for those type things. Sometimes you have to pay additional for those things. We'll be looking at beefing up devices if needed for that connection from home if possible. We'll be looking at virtual if we need to beef up anything with virtual. So there are a lot of pieces with technology that we can keep going. You know, it's a, yeah. Security pieces. We might even look at those pieces. We are in desperate need of looking at intercoms for our school systems, you know, those type things. Safety, that will come as a part of that, and sometimes those are connected to that infrastructure piece. So if we beef those pieces up with intercoms, then we'll need to also beef up that infrastructure. Sure.
As far as the MLS specialists are concerned, are we going to have more help in the individual schools with the technology support? I know last year we had the media specialist helping with that, and that's a big job. So I'm just curious about whether or not they will have more support dealing with the day-to-day problems and the issuing of the technology and that sort of thing.
Sure. We talked about beefing up our internship programs for our high schools to also share that work with middle schools and with elementary schools, making our students and letting them help us make responsible choices for helping our media specialists. Teaching them and training them, having Canty and Dell train those students so that they become a part of our internship or CATE programs and actually earn, you know, additional credits for those pieces while we look at this, and then while helping out our media specialists. We know that this year was different, and it was quite a interesting year.
Well, also my concern is that next year our media centers will be reopened. As I'm assuming they will be reopened, because this year most of them were shut down, and it was still a big job for our media specialists. So my concern is once they are reopened, and this is still falling on them, that's a lot to expect for them to handle.
It is. We will continually look at that. We're meeting Thursday to look at the technology plan and see if we need to beef that up, and asking media specialists to come in and provide input for that. So hopefully we can make some changes that occurred this year and hopefully make it better for next year. Yeah, media specialists.
You would also ask them to go through their books to be sure that,
We'll look
I mean,
at that. We'll look at who's going to help you with technology. We want you to look at what's on the library shelf. I like that.
Okay.
no, but I mean, since he's got them together, the guidance there, that might be a good idea to remind them to please check check what you've got on.
Also, Glenn, I think there are some federal funding that is available for increasing bandwidth, because I think
ma'am,
they've
we
got
saw that.
another pot of that
We do.
coming through, so we might want
There's
to
a
check into
connectivity
that.
fund that we're looking
Yes.
at now,
Yes.
so that's part of our discussion also.
Okay. Yeah, it's part of their fund that they have set aside for COVID relief. But that is part of it to help us, but it does not come in this pot of money that we receive.
It's all coming out of ESSER, but they have
Right.
their million, and that's what they spend on. A lot of it on technology.
Right.
Good evening. My name is Terry Ranley. I've got two DD2 students. My son will be a junior this year at Summerville, and my daughter will be in 7th grade at Dubose. My question is, will there be more teacher instructional times this year as opposed to just strictly learning on the computer? Because my now 7th grader had struggled a lot last year because all her learning was strictly on the computer. Even when they were back in the classroom, the teachers weren't teaching at all.
You are correct. This year would look differently, but the device itself is just a tool. We want those teachers actually teaching. So the more that they do hands-on learning, the more that they do direct instruction is what our teachers will be told for this upcoming year. They use that device, but they use it once again as a teaching tool, not for the entire day. Okay.
Small group. They bring those 6 or 8 up or whatever, give them some one-to-one instruction, then they work with another group while that group then does an activity maybe on the computer. But it's not to be the teaching. It's supposed to be just a support. In absence of another teacher to come into the room that we can't have, that we don't have, we don't have it. This is a way to give the children something meaningful, productive to do, while the teacher's able to try to do more one-on-one and divide our class into smaller groups. That's what it's intended for. A lot of people do a beautiful job of that, and some are struggling with that.
It was
Because
just really apparent in the middle school last year, and that is where, even though she was in gate classes, she still struggled and had to go to summer school where she completed a whole year of English in 4 days. Yeah, the high school really wasn't an issue. So.
really, that's interesting. Good,
So
but
my son, his first year got all A's for her first time ever. So I mean, he's not my issue. It's her, which
every child learns differently, and each one responds differently. But we learned a lot last year. Like I said, people gave it 200%, but none of us have ever faced that before. The teachers had to rely so on technology. When they came, they still are nurturing that because they were used to doing that, and they were trying to do the learning loss by catching people up. But again, that's why so many people are working so hard to get back face to face, because the children learn much better. All of them learn better face to face on a daily basis. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Board members? Any other questions or comments? No? Administrative staff? Nope. You do?
Am I to understand that the Chromebooks are in and they're going to be used from now till forever? The Chromebooks, I mean, the computers, so there won't be any paper or any, I mean, I feel like that kids have so much screen time that, do you think that's healthy? I want an educator to respond to that.
Yeah, as Mr. Pye stated, that is a learning tool. That is not the way to learn. And we are going back as close to the way of learning as we can possibly get where we were before. Just using the computers as for emergency situations. If we have a flood and we have to be out, then the child will not miss a day of school, and then we have to turn around and make it up. They can do that at home. Or we have a hurricane. That's what the one-to-one is actually meant to be used for, and for research type things. So everybody has their own. They can do their research to complete their science or their situation, whatever they're working on, their projects or whatever, to complete that, not to use it as their only way of learning. So we will be going back to the way it was pre-COVID, and then it will be used as just a learning tool.
Just off the cuff, would you hand Ms. Summerville, I hate to put you on the spot, could you tell me how you use our devices in your classroom, or how you plan to use them this coming fall? So this parent can be
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah, I taught synchronously all year. So I was teaching the kids online, and I was teaching the kids in class at the same time. And I love class notebook, and I like the OneNote because if a student was absent, they could just go to the page and they could see the assignments. But I taught the assignments, and then I had kids at home who they didn't want to turn their camera on, they didn't want to participate, so I bought a bunch of raffle tickets. And I said, if you will voluntarily turn your camera on or you will voluntarily answer a question while you're at home, I'll put those tickets in a jar, and I drew out 2 names at the end of the week for each class. They could either get 10 points on a major test, they could get a homework pass, or I would give them a $5 Dunkin' Donut card. And the kids who were had a 99 in my class, that's what they wanted. But yeah, I was in touch with everybody all at the same time, and it seemed to work great. But yeah, I was only using it like I would a PowerPoint. I was instructing the whole time. Yeah.
We did a lot of training. We're going to do even more training. We hired 200 new people. That right off they've got to know what our expectations are. And we're doing paper pencil. We had at one time, when I was principal many years ago, a big dependency on workbooks. Children did workbook pages after workbook pages. Parents would call me and say they got 30 worksheets to do for homework. So that was the problem. So it's been replaced now digitally. It's the same kind of concept. We have to always work with our instructional staff to remind them there are only so many hours in the day. The attention spans of these children are shorter, especially the younger they are, and we have to mix it up. Variety is very good. When you just need assistance, the computer may allow the child to revisit the teaching the teacher had, the lesson. It can be more definitive than to have a written page with no explanation on it. So parents could then look to see what they needed to know to be able to do the sheet, to be able to help them. So it's intended to be a helpful device to help. It's not to be the teaching tool unless you're in Virtual Academy. We're not, unless you're signed up for that. It's just a support in the classroom. We should not be seeing that for long periods of time every day. We just shouldn't be.
Okay, I think we got one more question.
Someone mentioned that we would not have non-essential visitors. Does that mean no volunteers?
No, we talked about that today. All these topics we talked about, including your letter, was addressed in my first meeting with my staff and sometime my immediate executive staff. Here's some issues. We need to talk about it. I need to report. I want to see this. I want to know what we know about this. Tell me where we are on this. I need if there's another side of the story, let me hear it. If this can be supported, then I need to know that too. So whatever it might be, we also talked about that. And I'm a big PTA person. Our children, yes, learn with computers. What did I tell you? Face-to-face is it. What is the whole government in the world pushing? Tutoring. Bring the parents in to help us. We have an army of parents who want to help. So I cannot exclude them. I know we have to be on the safety protocols. We'll continue those kinds of things, but they're going to come back. The PTA board, they can only meet during the daytime. They don't need to be meeting up in Waffle House. They need to be meeting in their child's school. And so they don't need to be run up down the halls, maybe like in some cases we used to have a lot of visitors to the schools, and some schools are real open, having all kind of events every day with lots of visitors. That, we might want to watch that. But I want to bring back the parent volunteers. The teachers depend on it. We have to have them. I depend on them.
I just want to take a second to thank people who did ask or speak about hard things. This is a good format to do that. And sometimes things don't get to Mr. Pye or to the board. We received that email this afternoon. And so we appreciate it. We're not perfect, but we're a darn good school district. And I would like to say, we've got a lot of things that we're going to be working on in the morning, and the policy committee and tonight has helped us so that we understand maybe a little better, so we can ask better questions. But I also want to say last year it was horrific in so many ways for parents, for teachers, but mostly for the children. I admire 95% of our teachers for what they had to do. It was new for them too. And I think they're going to be so grateful to get back into the old routine. That's our normal, but now we have other problems that have been brought to our attention, and we want to keep being that kind of district that you all want your children to come to. So as hard as it is sometimes to hear things, we need to. So thank you very much. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, if we have no more questions or comments, again, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming and for speaking out and explaining to us what some of your issues were. We really appreciate that. This was a forum to do that kind of thing, and we will be having another one on August the 9th. So the things that we heard tonight, we will be looking at between now and then, and hopefully we'll have some resolution to some of those by that time. So if not, thank you again, and y'all have a safe trip home.